My name is Jarrod. I work with Second Nature Football and I work with the team there. My speciality is speed and agility. I'm sorry for my croaky voice today. I'm battling a bit of a throat infection. Not to be worried though, it's not the Rona, so I'm good on all fronts that way. Today I really want to just keep it relatively short, relatively brief. We at Second Nature are doing a series of, information sessions, education sessions regarding our specialities. This one is just really geared to some introduction of some topics, how I view speed and agility, why is it important, why should you spend time in your training to become the best you can be at sprinting and at agility. I suppose that brings me to the first point: who am I and why should you be listening to me? And what value do I have? So my background professionally is through physiotherapy. I'm trained as a physio. I've worked as a sports physiotherapy for a few years. I've worked in professional sporting clubs, mainly across AFL, is my professional background. My personal background is that for a good solid 5 to 6 years, I represented Australia in sprinting. So I lived and breathed where some of the athletes on this call might be at. So I was doing the early mornings, the late nights, the hard sessions, the lactic build up work, all the skill work. And so I've been there and I've done that. And so in combination with that, obviously traveling the world and being trained by some really top-notch coaches, you tend to pick up some really good skills and some really good tips around how to get faster. And then since finishing that up professionally, I now consult with individual athletes across a lot of different sports, mainly field and running based sports, looking at how can we get you faster and how can I bring all those skills that I have from years of doing it and learning from the best, and how can we get you moving faster. And I also run a series of lectures. We won't go into the depth, but we do run a series of lectures with La Trobe University for the Sports Masters. So I do have some idea of what I'm talking about, but this is all my take on it. So this is not one way to do it. So look, if you pull off some information off Google, and I did this, so bear with me. So it's more just to define what are we striving to get to, and what are we defining as our objectives here. And the first one is what is speed? It's the rate of which someone or something moves. And when we apply that to football, is that how fast can you get from point A to point B? And that's what I really term as speed. It's not necessarily about doing things quickly, but it's being able to get from A to B and the rate of change that we're looking towards. Agility, on the other hand, and I separate the two. So when I'm looking at speed as just from A to B, agility is more regarding to nimbleness, or how you can change your body in an effective and efficient way. And the combination of the two is really important when you're looking at a sport like football, because you need to be able to attack, defend in a straight line with or without the ball. And in a really high paced and rapidly changing game, you need to then pivot, shift and change your role. So you might go from an attacking position to an offensive, to then covering off something, and then all of a sudden you might get to feed the ball and you need to execute a skill. So really they come hand in hand together when looking at this. Something interesting I always like to throw into any football talk that I do is how much running do you do? And admittedly, when I first looked into this, some of it was actually quite eye-opening, in that you're standing still for close to 6% of your time. So at least 5 minutes out of the 90, you're standing still. You're not doing a hell of a lot. The majority of your time is spent walking and or jogging. So up to an hour of walking and about 25 minutes of the total game jogging. Now, each of these walking, jogging, and as you look at the high intensity, all rated in a bracket of speed. So jogging, and this is looking at Premier League players. I'll just admit that as well. This is looking at the creme de la creme, and those players are doing upwards of 10 kilometers on average per game. But what I look towards is, because when we talk about sprinting and agility, what we're really looking towards is the small portion of our game. We're not looking at being able to jog faster or to walk faster. We want to be, when we get into those high intensity episodes of the game, when we're at high speed and when we're sprinting, to be so effective that we can execute whatever we're looking to do, whether it's a skill to score a goal or to cut off a defender or get into position, whatever we need to do. So when I'm working with an athlete and when we're doing this sprint work, we don't look to doing it a hell of a lot. We are really looking to do these small bursts and effective bursts. So we start talking about efficiency of movement and these kind of terms, because for a game at sprinting at our highest level, at our maximum velocity, it's less than a minute of our time over a whole game. So we really want to be contextualizing what we're looking towards there. So obviously we've got jogging and we've got some sprinting. So there's a few different terms already thrown around. One thing to differentiate between the two is that speed or sprinting is a skill that's taught. It's a learned technique and it often requires specific feedback. So it needs coaching. It needs someone there telling you how to put yourself in that right position, how to get, your knee drive or the arm position, your head position. All these factors come through when trying to execute the speed component. You need someone there helping you along. Whereas jogging or slow running, typically I'm trying to find the right word, you inherently figure out how to do that more efficient. So if I get two people who have never run before, one, over time with lots of different, slow running will get more efficient, whereas sprinting, that's not the case. So when we come in, the jogging and stuff, that is super helpful, but we really want to start teaching you how to sprint and how to get better from that point of view. Looking at the two in terms of breaking it apart, obviously we change our terminology and we start changing what we're looking for. So when we're looking at where do we hit the ground, obviously it makes sense when you're sprinting, the athletes are up on their toes, the midfoot to the forefoot, and we're trying to get that spring off. Whereas obviously the distance in the jogging component where you might be hitting more of the midfoot or more to the rear foot as well. Arms, again, you're generally vertical and quite horizontal when you kind of come in, vertical with a lot of horizontal forces. Whereas obviously with the distance running, you tend to be more tucked in, and that's the obviously aim to increase efficiency. Obviously running speeds are high with sprinting, but you tend to stride out more. You have greater hip flexion, so how far does your knee come up? And you reduce the contact time. So these are some of the things we start looking towards starting to improve when trying to get someone to be faster. We've got here's a slide I think highlights it really well. These are sort of three major components, and this has come from my days as a track and field athlete. We got here Tyson Gay, who's probably one of the all-time fastest athletes on the planet. You can see his position here, nice strong in the arms, high hip, high knee, ankles up in a nice position. LaShawn Merritt runs the 400 meters. So again, a sprinting fast event, but not to maximum velocity. Very similar positions, but just not as high. So the hip, knee slightly lower, ankle again not being in much dorsiflexion, and the arms just crossing the midline in a nice efficient way. Whereas you compare that to your marathon runner, so it's just more built for efficiency and just keep ticking over. It's still the same position, still same things going on, but just not as much amplitude. So when we get an athlete or especially from football, we really need to start breaking these apart. And what I come in and help with is this side of things, how to teach you how to get faster and how to build these positions into your game. One thing that's really special with football though, and I will never forget it, and always comes back to it, is that you need to be able to change direction. So that's something different to track and field where I spend all my time. Being able to get to a spot, decelerate, pivot, turn, look somewhere else while you're focusing on potentially where the ball's coming from. This is the crux of football we need to focus in. So if we combine these positions in when you're ultimately running without the football and not competing, you add this into it, hopefully we can get you going a lot faster. How I view why speed and agility is really important is that speed creates opportunities. We wouldn't be asking an athlete to get faster, nor would we recommend it, nor would I even be here talking to you if it didn't have any value. Speed, being faster to get to that player a little bit quicker, the loose ball, to being able to get to it quicker, gives you an opportunity to do something with it. We just said that sprinting is only a finite part of a whole game that you're looking towards. If you don't have that tiny little extra speed, that extra little 1% to your competitor, that might be that opportunity lost, and you don't get a lot of them throughout the game. So I've got a short little video, and hopefully it plays well. It's just pulled from YouTube through here, and I've got some stills to go through it, but this is really the importance of speed and agility. So here we have a corner kick coming in through here. The player that we're looking towards is just here. So the ball's going to come in. Okay, so they get sprayed back out. Now he has to make a decision here. What does he do? He's looking at the ball. He's standing still at the moment. So then he needs to create a pivot pattern or a change of movement, turns around, and now it's a one-on-one with this player. He's then able to beat that player and get to a contest with a player that hasn't had the time to control that ball to then have an option. If he had been stuck in the mud, maybe not turned as quickly, wasn't paying attention, jogged, moved around, he wouldn't have been able to get to this contest to be able to be effective. If this player in the blue had some time to control the ball, get a hold of it, he has options here, here, here. He's got options everywhere that he could potentially go to. He's then able to make a break, and then now it's a 2, but his speed and his efficiency has allowed him to create space between these players. Again, I talk about opportunity. If you only have a small one, half a second to execute a skill versus 3 or 4 seconds, generally the player with a lot longer time will be able to execute at a higher percentage. He makes that break. He's got plenty of time, plenty of room to control the football, and ultimately gets in a position to score. My job for an athlete that comes to me is to not get them to be able to kick the ball better or to be able to score more goals, is way back here, is to be able to get him to be in a position to create an opportunity. So to be able to get to this player quicker to create that option. So if I skip through there to the next slide, what we'll see is just some breakdowns of it. And I've already gone through it, so I won't spend a lot of time going over it. But as the ball comes through, he's facing this way, he needs a turn. So he doesn't have to do a 180-degree turn, then beats this player, gets to here, has to have a contest, but he only has created that opportunity by being quick and being agile. And obviously we talk about then a maximum velocity. So he's gone from a change of movement pattern to straight line sprinting and then executing through there. So quite an in-depth look at one small fraction, so less than sort of 30 seconds with one game, but he put himself in that position. So everything I come back to is about putting yourself into that position. So I've talked a little bit about why it's important and opportunity creation and some of the things that fit into it, but how do you get faster? And I suppose that's probably one of the takeaways you're looking towards getting out of today. Start speed training. That's probably the easiest way to put it. In order to get fast, you do need to train fast. Marathon runners aren't inherently fast because they don't practice sprinting. I know it's a basic concept, but then sprinters are fast because they're constantly practicing movements faster and faster and faster. So within a training plan or in a training program, you need to dedicate practice to improving your speed and agility. It's not just simply, going out and just playing and hopefully, I didn't have a lot of opportunities. I didn't get a lot of ball today. Go back. Could I have put myself in a position if I was a little bit quicker to get those opportunities? I really work heavily when I consult with athletes, dedicating off-season time or even pre-season, full training days to improve this aspect, to really get them understanding how to move more efficiently and obviously faster. And as I said before, the best athletes practice what they perform. So soccer players are no different. Although what we sometimes get caught up in is, ball skills, ball striking, feeding, playing position, and that's all well and good. And I'm not going to detract from that at all. But I guess from my point of view is if you can't get to a player to defend or to attack because you're a bit slower than the opposition, you'll never get a chance to execute that skill. As a saying that really rings home with me is that perfect practice makes perfect. Simply, we spoke earlier before about training for sprinting requires specific feedback and specific cueing to get faster that way. And I think that simply just going out and being just trying to be faster will help to a certain degree. But what we really want to try and do is elite, above everyone else. So we really want to be perfectly practicing this. And what does that process look like? So from when if I happen to be consulting in on an athlete, and we go, how can we get them faster? What does the process look like? And it ultimately comes down to sort of 5 main stages that we start with. So first of all, we'll get an athlete and we put them through a running and movement assessment. Now, that's not just myself, but that's with Elliot, our physio that works with Second Nature, and we put them through a musculoskeletal screening. Where are they strong? Where are they weak? Which muscles can we develop? Where can we work with Christian, our strength and conditioning coach, to build them up and have the strength to hold position? I come in and have a look at their running technique and how they move, and where can we optimize that player's efficiency. Also, with Travis being our head coach, we start looking at where are our opportunities, where are we missing in a game scenario, where in training, where are we missing that one little second where we could be in this position and not here? Where are we getting caught stuck in the mud? And then I'm going to introduce a topic with the speed pyramid to them. Once we've kind of got these opportunity analysis, we've done our running assessment, musculoskeletal assessment, we start working on the things. I'll talk about that in a second. And then from that pyramid that we work on, we start then building into training games and start building into performance, because that's really where we need to be able to perform. There's no point me getting you to run a 30-meter time and improve it by half a second if you can't do that on the field, or you can't do it with a soccer ball, if you can't do it without checking where your opponent is. So we start to add in training games, and ultimately leads to performing and playing. So a running assessment. So I'm not sure, I'll just speak broadly on it because it's something that I do quite regularly, but maybe not everyone's super familiar with what a running assessment looks like. There's a few different ways we can do it. People can send me videos and we can discuss them. We can give a real sort of general opinion. I can come to training with Travis and start looking at our movement patterns and whatnot. What we can do, we can put together a report. Where does the athlete, what's their head and neck position like at certain phases of the gait? And later talks that I'll give more details with regards to what are we looking for at each of these phases. I don't want to get caught up in the nitty gritty just today. I just really want to keep it broad strokes. But we start to put together a little bit of a report so we can look to what are the things we need to improve on. At what point of the cycle of running do we need to look towards? This is just straight line running. Either both, we can do one at jogging and we can do one at sprinting, but mainly we're looking at the sprinting side. While the muscle assessment, why do we do that as well? Well, this is just a quick example of the muscles that are firing at certain points in the gait or in the running cycle. I'm not going to get super bogged down in this because I just don't think there's a lot of value today in going through it. But what we want to do is if a certain player is maybe not at the support phase, maybe not looking to crash hot, we assess what their hamstrings like, because you can see through the support phase. So that's the support phase. Is when they're on the ground. So when you're actually generating your speed. And obviously we know the hamstrings are super important, but if there's something not right, we can go and do some strength tests, get Elliot involved and get Christian involved and say, what's going on with their hamstrings? Could they be stronger? Because I can keep working on you and get your positions right, but you might need some strength to do them. So we will start to get a gauge of what's happening with that. As I mentioned, the opportunity analysis, I just put some basic questions into criteria. This is just a abbreviated version that myself and Travis work through with regards to what information are we looking towards getting. So it's obviously age and gender. Obviously, we know what sport we're all playing. We're all playing football, but who are we playing for? What position? That's probably one of the ultimate factors of what we're going to try and improve, because as you can imagine, a midfielder in the centre, to a striker or a left back, they all have different, I won't say the word plays, but the different scenarios that they get caught up in where they can be better. We obviously, if there's been things raised by coaches and that potentially we can help with, and these are just a brief view. The pyramid, this is basically for me the holy Bible with regards to sprinting, because these are the things that I look towards and I start prescribing exercises with, or prescribing training programs with, because ultimately we say, okay, we need to work on your acceleration, but how does that fit into your whole plan? Obviously, I've mentioned a fair few times that technique is the building block for all of this. So, a coach said to me once that if you only have a short base, your pyramid will be really small, but the bigger the base, the bigger the pyramid can grow. Technique, the more foundation we can lay with technique, the better off we'll be. As we start moving up, we've obviously got acceleration. So that's how fast we can get off the mark from a standing still for our defenders, and even a little bit for our midfielders as well. How fast can we slow down? And I know that's sort of backwards, but being able to go from high speed to slowing down really quickly, really important. And obviously max velocity, and that's just basically how fast can you run in a straight line. And we saw earlier in that example that once he'd made his turn, got to the contest, being able to execute a skill, he then had a straight line. How fast can you run? We talk about change of direction because obviously being able to that's the agility component. One thing that Travis works on and I help him out with is field awareness. So what's their game sense like? Because we can identify these opportunities, but if you need to make a decision to dummy left or dummy right, why is that better? How can we improve that? Is that the right time to do it? Again, putting yourself in that chance to have the opportunity to do something. And ultimately what we cap it off is, I call it SAS, or skills at speed. We saw before he made the break, he got to the goals, he's traveling at a high speed. Then to be able to execute that skill is what we're all here for, is being able to score goals or to defend the player or do whatever we need to do. So I build up this pyramid, so build it obviously from technique, and we add all these different components in. And at the end, when we're playing games or when we throw balls in, is because we need to be able to add a skill into it, whether that's a header or kicking, clearing out from the back line, whatever it is. And I don't get too caught up in what that might be. I thought I'd share this because there's lots of contention out there around how do you get faster when starting to prescribe exercises and when you start adding that in. Look, whether we're talking about speed, and that's pure how fast can you move. What we actually want to start with is start doing some shorter exercises. So 10-meter sprints, 15-meter sprints, these really small efforts. That's all in the off season. So how fast can we get off the mark? Bang, bang, really quick stuff. As we get into max performance, so this is, your grand final, the end of the season, when you really want to be on cue, you're on super on point, is we start doing longer sprints. And these might be, 40, 50, 60 meters sprinting. Because obviously, as you saw there, you might need a chance where, even if you're a defender, the ball gets cleared in front and you need to turn, make a break, or catch up to someone who's got a through ball. You need to be able to have that flatline speed. A lot of coaches also get caught up in being able to repeat sprint, make that second effort that you're going to go through. And I talk about that as a speed endurance. So the ability to repeat your speed without having diminishing returns, because ultimately you can have one huge sprint, but then if you need to then walk straight afterwards and can't go again for another sprint, you're losing that opportunity. And that goes back to front. So when we start doing long work, a lot longer, a lot slower, and then we start to sharpen it up. And I've got this sort of inverted pyramid here because at the end of it, we want to start to marry the two up, where we're doing longer sprinting and shorter endurance. And then it kind of seems a bit backwards at the performance, but it comes down. And so you're going from doing this super long work, so you're doing 300-400 meters in your speed endurance, and you're doing them on slow repetitions and your 10 meters. And as it kind of comes in, it meets in the middle. So you've been able to hit 40-50 meters on repeat really quick within 75 seconds of each other. And that ultimately is going to end up with you being able to create more opportunities. Then obviously we add in training. So we've done all that sort of separately. We add the training component in. I'm not going to talk about this too much because every position, every player is a little bit different in how we do it. What I will look towards is how do we break it down for an athlete that I might have. I've just taken an example that I did a couple of years ago. This player is happy for me to share, where we had 2 sessions a week, and this was in pre-season, and this is in conjunction to what we were doing with everyone else. And I just see that you've got your warm-up. We talk about movement patterns, so we create some KPIs, and we look at what the sessions might be. So we'll give you something like this, and then when we start to build forward. We spoke about building in drills and games. Again, I'm not going to get too caught up in, but we start being able to build all different movement patterns geared specifically to the athlete. I think that's basically what I wanted to get across initially in this first introduction, is that we're doing speed to create opportunities. Sprinting really is a technique that we need to be focusing on, and get some help out there. Come see us and we'll be able to help you that way. And then the other thing is there's lots of different components that we can work on. So they're my three things. In terms of coming away from today, really, they're the things I want you to think about. In terms of some actions that I want you to do, let's go down to the football field and start doing some sprint work, some straight lines, sprinting, and start having to think about what your opportunities might be, or where aren't you performing in your games or with your club, or your teams, that you can get better at, and then we can then start building it that way. So thank you everyone for your time. I'm happy to take any questions now. It looks like we've got about 8 minutes left on the conversation. I'm just having a look there. There was a question. Can anyone learn how to sprint properly? With enough time and enough coaching, 100% they can learn to sprint properly. It's a matter of, specifically with football, it's a matter of putting that in the context with what that player needs. So as much as we'd love to get everyone running 100 meters less than 10 seconds, do you really need that? In terms of generically, everyone can sprint, that's for sure. It's whether your body can handle it or not is another question. So thanks everyone. Doesn't seem like there's any more questions. Beautiful, happy days. Thanks everyone for popping on.